Hi there. Welcome, everybody, once again to Cast Iron Wednesday, which is a regular tradition that many YouTube cooking channels have been doing, where we simply do a video about cast iron on Wednesday because it gives us an excuse to have some fun showing off our cast iron, playing with cast iron, and especially cooking in cast iron. Because, well, what can we say? It's like they've been doing that pretty much since the beginnings of civilization. And more importantly, it's a lot of fun. It also gives us an excuse to show off our collections here. Because, yeah, there is something about having a collection of cast iron, even if your collection consists of only one cast iron pan. Then, even so, well, you're still part of the club. And so I very much thank you for showing up here. For all the folks who have been kind enough to show up here on this YouTube channel each week, I can only thank you so much, especially since, there are a number of names here that I certainly do recognize as well. Such as Keith Brookshire, for instance, who asked a few weeks ago, you mentioned a particular lid you're in search of and thought you may never find. What lid was that so I can be on the lookout for it? I'm trying to think, what kind of lid am I looking for? I can think one, and that was the BSR Century Series lid with the knob handle, the Pioneer lid, the one that may or may not be part of their Pioneer series. Because everything else in that was exactly the same as the Century Cookware series, except for the lid. But yes, hello everybody. Hello to Jerry 1952. DG is Dollar General. Yes, those dollar stores that are all over the place, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. And hello as well to Cast Iron Fanatic and Rocket Caver and Debbie and William Hurt, and hello, good evening, William McGee, and hello, Clico, and everybody, and Pat Z, and Val's Black Cat's Rules, and everybody else who has been kind enough to show up this evening. Yes, I do like seeing regular folks here, but I also like seeing folks who show up here for the first time, because that means, well, I guess word is spreading about this channel, and I can only thank everybody who's been kind enough to drop by. And I hope we keep you entertained long enough for you to stay, or at least to come back. But yes, as we mentioned tonight here, the subject for this evening is, well, cauldrons. And so, because of course, here it is October, and we are, of course, getting into the season for cauldrons, especially cast iron, because well, there are a lot of because about that. I mean, what can we say? I mean, first of all, as I said, we are getting close to Halloween, and like it or not, really, it's like when you think of Halloween, you think, of course, of witches brewing up a wonderful potion in their cast iron cauldron here. That's probably one of the two most common images you see for a witch. The other would be a witch riding on her broom, of course. But yes, cauldrons, of course, have really had this fascination. We've had this fascination with them really much since the beginning, really since they started using cauldrons. And there's something about these, probably because the name cauldron itself still sounds so medieval and so ancient. It's just really calling any of these pots a cauldron here gives it really a sense of history to it. And there's so much history to cast iron, and especially to cauldrons, that we could barely get started here. Time for witch's brew. Oh, don't you know it here? Um, heck, I mean, yeah, because and a witch's brew, of course, really can be pretty much anything you make in a cauldron. Because really, the dictionary definition of a cauldron is a big cooking pot. So it's one of those words here, really, that can stand for pretty much any pot you use in the kitchen. And so that means if you have a modern day cast iron Dutch oven, or a vintage Dutch oven, or even one of these real big pots here, you definitely have yourself a cauldron. And I can only encourage you to use it and to have a lot of fun brewing up some potions in it. Whether the potions are for your family or for your kids, or if you do any kind of ritual work, or even if you just celebrate Dia de los Muertos, or even All Saints Day. Yeah, that's right. the other holidays that take place all around October 31st. And Corey Clark, I see a lot of modern lodge and thrift stores, and I ask more than they cost, and and they ask more than they cost new. Well, that's certainly true. Yeah, that's because, of course, cast iron, as we know, has really had a renaissance as far as people wanting it and selling it over the last decade or so. We know that all too well, and that means pretty much a lot of resellers have reached the point where they think pretty much anything in cast iron seems to be worth its weight in gold. So yes, you will, and I have seen antique stores and thrift stores and the like selling rusty modern cast iron pans for more than what you would pay for them brand new at Wally World. But that's how it goes. They can, of course, set any price they want on those pans, but and yet at the same time, we can choose whether or not to actually pay that price for it. Which comes back to the question somebody said about DG and Dollar General a couple of minutes ago, and that is something that we only found out about the other day, in that it seems like Lodge Cast Iron has entered into some kind of a deal with Dollar General, because suddenly we are seeing Lodge Cast Iron pans show up at Dollar General. And what's more, apparently, according to Lodge, they are actually making these cast iron pans especially for sale at Dollar General. So it's not the same ones you would buy at Wally World, and they're not part of their seconds line. Apparently, the cast iron skillets that they're selling there are 9-inch size, which is slightly smaller, of course, than the 10-inch size that you would get pretty much um, at any other store. So it is shaped differently. That also means a typical Lodge 10-inch lid would not fit it. But I mean, what can we say? I mean, it's the same, almost the same, really, as those Asian made cast iron pans that they've been selling at Dollar General and Family Dollar and Big Lots and like up pretty much up through now, because they are, yeah. I mean, before these lodge pans started appearing, they were, of course, Asian made cast iron pans with those rough sandpaper like surfaces, and they still cook fine in the kitchen. And I've actually cooked in those pans. And while I would indeed prefer cooking in a nice BSR or a modern day lodge, they were still just fine for cooking. And for folks who have those pans from Dollar General, well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. If you want to get rid of your Asian made pans and go to Dollar General and get a Lodge cast iron pan, well, that's really your choice. And you can do what you want, but nonetheless, all I can ask really is that you keep cooking in cast iron. But yes, interesting compare concerning Dollar General cast iron. Yes, that's true. And I know the question has already come up as to whether these pans from Dollar General are going to be worth anything in the long run. Well, as kitchen users, of course, they're cast iron pans and they'll last you forever if you take good care of them, that is. But as far as collector value is concerned, I'm not so sure. I mean, you figure what's the difference between a typical Lodge 10-inch skillet and the 9-inch skillet that they're selling at Dollar General? Well, the size for one, and the fact that it actually has a label or a model number on the back of the pan that specifically indicates it's different from other models of Lodge pans, and that's it. Other than that, they are still your same cast iron Lodge cast iron pans. So there's really nothing outstanding of it, or I should say, nothing that would really appeal to a collector, other than a cast iron geek and a completist, someone who wants to actually keep track of every single type of pan that Lodge has made. Otherwise, I really don't think that they're going to be valuable in the long run. I mean, unless something crazy happens with Dollar General and the cat, then maybe. But I don't think it's very likely. I mean, I really can't see 10 or 20 years from now somebody posting on eBay, this is the rare Lodge Dollar General pan. Doesn't really seem that likely. I mean, a few years ago, Lodge actually did made a deal with Macy's, and they sold those rust-resistant, heat-treated cast iron skillets at Macy's. And they only sold them for like maybe a year, perhaps two at the most, and then they went away. And we don't see those appearing on eBay at sky high collectors prices. In fact, if anything, it seems like they've pretty much been forgotten by collectors. So I would not be surprised if the same thing happens with Dollar General's large cast iron. On the other hand, hopefully they'll sell well. And I mean, and getting a cast iron pan from Dollar General, well, there's certainly nothing wrong with that either. So, Rick Stumbow, I have a Dollar General 9. I bought it as a user and it works great. I did not buy it for an investment. And that, I think, is probably the best reason to buy a cast iron pan. I mean, especially, yeah, with a collection like mine, yeah, I know. But especially if you're just starting out. I mean, really, what you want to get yourself is a durable cast iron pan, something of the kind that you will use every day. And so that 9-inch Dollar General cast iron pan should work just fine. All right. Aren't the Dollar General pans being exclusive, just like Costco's large 11-inch skillet? Yeah, that certainly seems to be the case. Yes. So, and they are great, and they're, but even so, um, really, I mean, while there are differences, it's not enough, I think, really, to have for most people. I mean, there may be an exception for everyone, but for most people, I don't think it's really enough to go out of your way for. I mean, whatever's convenient, I suppose. In other words, if you have a an 11-inch skillet from Costco, does that mean you're going to run out and buy the Dollar General 9-inch skillet? Eh, I don't know. You know, when I was first getting started collecting cast iron, and I was crazy, and I pretty much got everything I could lay my hands on, I probably would have, but I like to think I've kind of moved on from that point because, well, like I said already, I've got a such a collection that really I can pick and choose, and it's not like I need to grab every single piece of cast iron I can lay my hands on. But I'm the exception. I realize that. So I suppose it's really different for everyone. And Papa, he said at the same time, no lids for either by Lodge. Um, However, I have no doubt that Lodge would have lids available for these pans, not necessarily at Costco or Dollar General, but I would think that if you went on Lodge's website, you could probably find a lid in that size. I mean, heck, it was at the Lodge factory store, for instance. Hey, look at this, a cauldron. It was at the Lodge factory store that I found these little lids here that fit on their 1 pint kettle. And not that I'm forcing the conversation here, but I mean, since I've got this here, yeah, this, of course, is indeed a cauldron, even though it is only 1 pint in size. I actually won these two on a contest on Lodge's Facebook group several years ago with a pizza recipe, and so I was lucky enough to get these. Well, as I said, as a prize. And then a couple of years later, I took my first trip down to the Lodge factory store in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee. And in their seconds, that famous seconds area, what did I see? But these lids. And so, of course, I couldn't pass them up. And now, as a result, here is a tiny little cast iron cauldron with a lid. And yeah, I mean, these things are adorable, but they are still great for cooking too. You can make individual servings for kids in this, and I've done that. I've made cobblers, apple cobbler, or even what's the other word? Apple crumb in these little cauldrons here, and they're terrific for that. Not to mention, of course, I mean, again, people who go into the ritual stuff, these things obviously are perfect for display because you can put a candle right in these, or even just put in a little bit of Everclear alcohol and just light the thing on fire just like that, which I've also done. So, but the point being is that I got the lids separately, and I got them at the Lodge factory store. And I would suspect that if you look on Lodge's website or even call their customer service department, you will almost certainly, I would think, find 9-inch lids and 11-inch lids for those unusual cast iron skillets. So, pot pie, yes, there's another example for you right there. Be sure to wear your spurs if you're taking tip. My Aunt Cheryl makes the best peach cobbler on earth, and I love Everclear. I'd put shrimp and grits in that cute little thing, and why not? I mean, heck, even say for things like Thanksgiving or something. Imagine serving side dishes in those little cast iron pans, in those little pots. So yes, everything here has a use, even these tiny little things. And for that matter, now that I'm thinking of it, I actually forgot a couple of cauldrons, and I'm going into the kitchen right now to get them, which I've shown these things off before too. And that would be these little things, these tiny little half pint enameled cast iron Dutch ovens, which were a present for me. I believe it was around Thanksgiving about 3 or so years ago. My brother got these, and he got them for me at Christmas tree shops. So I think he paid like maybe either $6 or $7 each for these. And they are indeed enamel cast iron, and I still do my best to get some use out of these because, again, they make great individual serving dishes. They also make great butter melters or sauce pans. Well, I mean, actually for putting sauce in, for instance, if you're basting sauce, for instance. So even these little things certainly have their use there. So did you see me in action with the 6 wedge? Oh, nice, Cynthia. I'm glad to see you've been using that. I really love the 8-inch lodge skillets with their ear handles for baking, for individual apple pies and meat and pot pies. Oh, yes. We're talking about, Lodge's handle skillets, and those things certainly are very useful, yes, especially since now they're making skillets in that size, although they've been doing those skillet lids for pretty much as long as I can remember. Not to mention the large pie plate, which all of which are essentially the same thing. They're only shaped just slightly different, I guess. So, and I saw some of those today, but they were stoneware Le Creuset. Yes, that is true. I have seen them even at places like TJ Maxx and Marshalls. Usually, you can see Le Creuset at TJ Maxx and Marshalls. They're still at the Le Creuset price, although a big discount even for Le Creuset. But yeah, I mean, what would these things from Le Creuset be at Marshalls? Maybe $30 perhaps. It's just a guess because I don't have them myself. Hello, Andrew Bonificio. Hope everyone is well. Yeah, I certainly hope so too. For the record, we've been having some what they call weather breaking, no, record breaking heat here in the New York area for this time in October, which means that for the past couple of days and for the next couple of days, it's been up in the 70s and close to 80 degrees, and we're still going out without a jacket here in October. And I'm doing my best to enjoy it as well. Although I do understand that by the weekend, the weather is going to change, and then we're finally going to get into some more weather closer to October. Oh well, you can't have it forever. So, oh yeah, like some sort of quest. Let me see. That would be. Oh yeah, Celine 77. I'd fill those up with a hot dip, like some sort of quest. You know it. Yeah, I mean, definitely, you could fill those things with that dip as well. Especially since a lot of people do game day on Sunday. This would be certainly perfect for it. 34 degrees Friday night. Yes, exactly. So, time to turn on the heat. Well, I'm going to enjoy it for as long as I can. But anyway, yeah, as I mentioned, those indeed are yeah. Any one of these are cauldrons, as I mentioned. Whether we're talking about these little lodge country kettles, or if we're talking about these little enameled cast iron Dutch ovens, because yes, a Dutch oven is indeed a modern day cauldron. I mean, I'm not just using an excuse, and I'm not just calling it a cauldron. That's exactly what it is. This is a modern day cauldron because you could do anything and everything in this Dutch oven that you could do in an old-fashioned cauldron, except that this particular one, of course, is a lot bigger. Yes, that's true. However, the point is just that. I mean, it is a cast iron Dutch oven, and for that matter, so is this other cauldron here. And I've shown that one off recently as well. This, of course, would be the best duty South African potjie, which as I said, I've shown that one off recently. Was it just last week? I think we did that deep frying. I think it was, and yeah, um, and it did a great job too. Best of all, I managed to get some an additional seasoning on this potjie here, because after I cleaned out, after I got rid of the oil, rather than completely washing it out, I wiped off as much as I could, and then I put it in the oven for like about a couple of hours at 475 degrees, and I essentially put another layer of seasoning on this. So I'm quite happy about this. I did talk about this potjie pot last week, but nonetheless, here it is here. This is a nice number 3 size potjie, which translates to about 8 liters in size, supposedly, although I kind of question that. But it's a nice sized pot, and you can cook just about anything in this. And yeah, the point being as well, it is a modern day cauldron, and it is a modern day Dutch oven. Somebody on my YouTube, yeah, I did a short video on this potjie as well, and somebody commented, um, you know, is there anything that you can do with this that you can't do with a Dutch oven? And the answer I had to say was no, not really. I mean, this essentially is a fancy Dutch oven. And for that matter, so is this huge one, too. About the only well, aside from this one being bigger, about the only difference between this and the standard Dutch oven is the shape. I mean, this does have a very nice look, much like a modern day, much like a medieval cauldron. It's also much deeper, which was why I did that deep frying with it. If you want, I could probably even move these around so that I can put the potjie up in the front. Of course, to do that, I might have to sacrifice this other piece, namely this Griswold Dutch oven, which I guess I will put over here for the time being. And we will move. Oh boy, this thing's heavy. Ugh. Potjie over here. So so you can get a better view of it. I would love to make an oxtail potjie, but oxtail is $11 a pound in my area. Yeah, there is that. So, oh, aluminum lid. You're probably talking about the big cauldron again, aren't you? And yes, as a matter of fact, you're right. Ugh. I could not find an iron lid that would fit this thing, although I tried. So I ended up getting an aluminum lid. This nice, huge, I think it's like 21 or 22-inch aluminum lid that fits about as good as it needs to on this big pot here. So yes, like you said, I have an aluminum lid. When I first got this thing, I was ecstatic, obviously. I've told folks about this particular pot here, this 15-gallon Savory Company cauldron. And this thing is like about, again, at the widest, it's probably about 22 inches wide or so. Well, I went trying to find an iron lid that would fit this thing. And one place that I went was Cabela's. From my understanding is that Cabela's house brand cast iron, I believe, has been discontinued. The one that they used to have with Camp Chef. And the reason for that, of course, is that Cabela's is now a part of Bass Pro Shops, so they don't have their own house brand anymore. But when they were doing their house brand, they actually did have these huge 20-inch cast iron lids, and they were reasonably affordable too, all things considered. I think it was about $40 or so. So I went and got one of those lids and tried to fit it onto this cauldron here, and it was very, very slightly too big, meaning that the rim of that lid would not fit securely on the rim of this cauldron. So, like it or not, as nice as it wasn't sufficient for cooking. So, I don't know if heartbroken is the right word, but I was kind of disappointed with that. So, as a result, had to go and get that aluminum lid instead. So, okay, thanks, gang. I'll blame the freezing on Louisiana telecommunications. Looks like the lid I found for my lodge number 14. Yeah, that sounds about right, if you ask me. And that's probably not a bad thing to do. Yes, it's true that there are cast iron lids out there for the number 14 lodge. And apparently they even fit the BSNR lodge because they're the same size. But those things, of course, are prohibitively expensive because they're vintage. And Lodge simply doesn't, as far as I know, they don't make those 14-inch lids anymore. So, yeah, you can pay. I mean, while granted, for some folks, it's a great investment, or they might find a terrific bargain and end up with a number 14 Lodge cast iron lid. But for most of us, myself included, it was a lot less expensive and still good enough to get an aluminum cover. And that certainly I would recommend for anybody who has one of these big, whether it's a big cast iron pot or even a big cast iron pan. You know, because if you want a lid for it, cast iron is nice. And if you have the opportunity, great, go and get it. If you don't have the opportunity, there are options like this aluminum lid, or if you have one that's more regular size, you can even find a standard lid, you know, at antique stores or even discount stores. So it's certainly not out of the question. Oh yeah, leave the porch light on for me. Yeah, tell me about it. Oxtails are great when they are prepared properly. That is. So it's been a couple of years since I've tried making oxtail, but it was certainly worth the effort too. We have big deer in Nebraska and Kansas. A lot of southern people come hunting up here. I like my aluminum lid, much lighter. There is that too. And of course, it still does the good job of helping to, well, keep the heat in, which of course is what a lid is for. And so I certainly have no complaints about it. You really wouldn't want a cast iron lid that big. Well, if that if that big cast iron lid from Cabela's had fit on this cauldron, who knows? Maybe I would have wanted it. But I do agree though, having a light lid does make it more portable and more convenient, especially for a beast of a cauldron that's this size here. I think I will move this over and let's see what we can do to get a better view of this because I'm sure this is what folks want to see right now. After all, this is about cauldrons. Let's look at a cauldron, shall we? And there we go, lowered the camera, but yes, here it is. Oh boy. This thing here weighs 75 pounds. And yes, I have definitely weighed it, so I know that for a fact. 75 pounds empty. So lifting this thing is really a challenge. Filling it with food is even more of a challenge. It's definitely a two-person job to lift this thing when it's full of food. And yes, I've done so. It's is really that in it is an adventure in itself. That's for sure. But this is definitely a 19th century cauldron, and I know that not for a couple of reasons, not the least of which, of course, the manufacturer's name is right here on the side of this, in fact. And let me see if I can get some kind of a view. Yeah, here comes the roller coaster, folks, but hopefully it'll be worth it because there we are. Okay, there we go, more or less. Because here's the manufacturer mark on the side of this Savory and Company, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So this is unquestionably a 19th century cauldron. The Savory Company was in business from something like the the early 1800s to the late 1800s. And I'm told that this is pretty typical of a cauldron from their midway period, which means it would probably date somewhere around from maybe 1850 to maybe the Civil War period or so, the 1870s or so. which is really not so bad, and I'm certainly not complaining about that because yeah, it's entirely possible this thing could have been used during the Civil War. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, a couple of things for identifying cauldrons for the record. Not always, and I've been saying this a lot lately, and nobody on the internet has contradicted me on it, which I'm not bragging about that, but I'm stating that hopefully this means I'm giving accurate information. What I do a lot of times with the cauldron when I see it is to look at the ears because often, not always, but often, the flat top ears like this indicates that it's likely of 19th century make, probably like before the industry changed in the late 1800s or so, and that's when mold, cast iron molding technology, all of that improved. And that's when the things changed. They introduced wood burning stoves in those days, along with flat bottomed cast iron skillets to go with the stove. And that's when they started. Well, eventually, by the turn of the 20th century, of course, they started removing gate marks, casting cast iron pans in a different manner so that the gate mark was no longer on the bottom. And they were still making these cauldrons all the way up until, I would guess, probably around maybe the Great Depression to World War II or so. So there are still cauldrons out there from that time, from the early 20th century. And as far as I know, most of them had gate marks all the way up until that period, because, well, it was a lot more difficult to make something this size than it was to make, say, a cast iron skillet, for instance. So they still cast them in the same way, and as a result, they often had gate marks. In fact, quite a few of them had double gate marks on the bottom, probably because they were casting two pieces separately, two halves, and then bringing them together to produce one pot. And so that's why they had a double gate mark. But again, the one key I've found, I at least I estimate, I can't say that this is absolutely canon, but I estimate that if a cauldron has much smaller, round, thin ears, I would call that probably more of a 20th century cauldron, as opposed to the thick, very thick, flat top ears of this 19th century cauldron. This is probably my best marker for identifying this as a 19th century cauldron, other than the manufacturer's mark, of course. But for a lot of them that don't have manufacturer's mark, I would say just that. I would go for the flat top ears. Um, the other thing, of course, is on the bottom are these extremely thick legs. Let me see. Hopefully, I can get a shot of this leg here. There we go. Trying to get something of a decent view of that. Yeah, very short and extremely thick legs, as opposed to longer, thinner legs. Ugh. There we go. Let's get back up and let's look inside here. So, let me check for a couple of comments. I can say some more about this cauldron. I'm not done with it either. So, relaxing at the hotel. Okay. Do the lids on your Dutch ovens have the spikes on the inside? Well, the large ones do, yes, but others, well, others don't. Like, for instance, let me bring out the lid of a Griswold Dutch oven, for instance. They call this the button lid because of this raised logo here on the top. And Griswold, as a lot of folks know, they did not have spikes on the bottom of the lids, but rather they had this circular pan. In fact, the logo on this is kind of covered up with seasoning. And because if I were to strip this thing, the Griswold logo on this would be much more easy to see, other than this one here on the top. So no, not all of these lids have these spikes on the bottom. They call them basting spikes, and supposedly they actually do what they say they're going to do. I mean, for instance, here is a typical lodge lid, of course. I mean, granted, with the lodge logo, and it has the spikes that you're talking about. Whereas a Birmingham stove and range lid, like this one here. As some folks also know, this is a Red Mountain Series BSR lid. They don't have the spikes on the bottom. Instead, they have these dimples on the bottom here. And in most instances, this would instantly identify this as a BSNR lid. Although the other thing to note are the ears, of course, so that they could fit on their Dutch ovens and also on their skillets. There is a known Asian imitation of the BSNR lid that also had these dimples on the bottom, but they did not have the ears on the side. They were just completely rounded. And those are pretty much known to be Asian made. All right. So, still going on here. All right, much appreciated, K Clock. About 2 BSNR today I've been working on while watching. What are you doing in your next Thursday night cooking show? Oh, hi, Louis. Yeah, hello, Louis J. Someone gave me an Asian-made skillet they didn't want. This thing is heavy and holds its seasoning like a champ. It's 11.5 inches across. Nice. Well, congratulations, Jimmy. And I would definitely say you got yourself a nice score there. How did you restore the huge cauldron? It was very difficult. Okay, yeah, because when I got this thing, it was pretty heavy with rust. Yes, it was. Um, and so I went. This cauldron was the reason I went and got myself a huge lye tank. I've done a couple of shots of what I have out in my garage. You know, in my garage, I actually have one of those huge, wide and very short green trash barrels. You know, the kind that you usually see in industrial sites. We're not talking like your typical Rubbermaid or hefty trash barrel. We're talking, they're usually green and they're a thick plastic or some kind of material like that, and they're very, very wide. And I got one of those things especially so that I could fit this and put this in the lye tank. And I think I did. It's good grief. It's already been like almost 7 years since I got this thing. Wow. So the memory is not quite as good as it used to be, but I had this thing in the lye tank for at least a month or so before I took it out. And then after that, I did the electrolysis on the inside anyway. And here's one thing. And yeah, I need to do a video of this as well, in that I actually used electrolysis on this, and I attached the black, I believe the negative anode, directly to this pot itself. And I took the sacrificial anode and hung it right in the center, so that way it gave a nice electrolysis cleaning of the entire inside of the pot. The outside of the pot, no, it was not affected that way because, yeah, it would have to be completely in the electrolysis solution for it to work on the outside, which means I cleaned the outside of this pot the hard way, in that I actually spent, I don't know, probably an afternoon or so in my driveway, giving this thing a nice scrubbing with lots and lots of barkeeper's friend. So I pretty much, did my best to scrub away all the surface rust on the outside of the pot. And then after that, of course, came the seasoning, which also was done in 2 parts because I just couldn't get the whole thing. I really couldn't heat this whole pot up to hot enough to season a pan. So I got out the propane burner and got it to the bottom and put it under the bottom. And with that, I was able to season most of the inside. And then I actually took this thing inside my apartment and put it on top of my electric stove, bottom with the top down, bottoms up, so that I could season that part of it. So yeah, it was quite an adventure to restore this pot. And even so, I've been looking for reasons to use it. I've been able to use this pot in the last several years. I've been able to use this thing, I don't know, maybe 5 times. I would love to be able to use it more often than that, but I just so far have not had the opportunity to do so, unfortunately. I've done my best. I've done a couple of videos of doing jambalaya in this pot. I made a jambalaya as part of my dad's memorial service, in fact, after he passed away. Um, and I think there were a couple of other opportunities as well. But yeah, this unfortunately, as I said, I want to do more cooking in this thing, but really, you need an excuse because this is a major project. Not the least of which is just lugging this silly thing around. Not to mention a propane burner and all the accessories to go with it, but getting all the food needed to fill this thing up. To do a jambalaya in this thing, I had to do 25 pounds of chicken, 7 pounds of sausage, about 12 pounds of rice, not to mention several of the peppers, onions, and celery for the Trinity. That costs some money. So, yeah, I mean, not to mention the effort. So, yeah, using this thing as a project. I'm definitely looking for more excuses to use it, though. So, that's my story of restoring this huge cast iron cauldron here. So, all right, let's see here. I don't want to miss on your comments. Cast iron beans. Oh yeah, well, I'm so glad you like the beans as well, Cynthia, and Louis' banana dessert as well. Okay, thanks, Papa. Maybe I can find an adventurous welder to repair it. Adventurous welder. I missed something. So you got something that's Mark Sieber. My guess would be you found a cauldron with a hole in it. Well, if so, then I can definitely wish you the best of luck. When you think of garage, think of electronic glass ball and that V-shaped arc generator. Well, definitely, I don't have one of those, unfortunately. Um, it would be nice, but it would really just be a toy. Okay, I made the mistake and bought the Dutch oven. You made the mistake and bought the Dutch oven, Corey Clark. Tell us about it. What Dutch oven did you get? Vintage, modern, Lodge, Griswold, Wagner, Asian? All right, because any one of those would be good. And in fact, now that I'm mentioning that, let me show off again that other cauldron that I restored recently, and that would be this one. Namely, this boy. Look at the size difference of this thing, and this thing is big enough too. Ugh. This, of course, is that 12-inch Harbor Freight Tools Dutch oven that somebody brought to me in a really lousy condition, and I did my best to restore it. And I'd like to say, looks like it turned out pretty good too. But yeah, this is your typical 12-inch Dutch oven that they're selling at like Harbor Freight Tools and Tractor Supply. And as you can see, this is a nice pot in itself. So really, if you have the opportunity to get one of these things, I certainly would not frown on it. Um, that's of course where we get into all the politics about Chinese cast iron. We've talked about that enough times. I'm not sure if we want to go into those politics again. I'll only say that the only problem with cast iron from China is the politics. I mean, the pot itself is safe for cooking, and I will gladly stand by that. Nonetheless, here it is, and yeah, that's what I mean. This is a cauldron in itself. I mean, it's got a nice shape to it, and anybody who would want to use this as a cauldron on Halloween or whenever, I mean, there would certainly be nothing wrong with that. Ugh, at all. All right, okay. Let's put the focus on this again for a moment. Then I'll. How are we doing now here? That's the one I bought. Oh, so you got yourself a Dutch oven just like that. Well, then in that case, I can only say congratulations, Corey. And I would also say get some use out of it because you got yourself a 12-inch Dutch oven here. I mean, you could make a lot of huge pots of stuff. Well, okay, I know. Compared to this, maybe not, but yeah, this is a huge pot. and you will definitely get a lot of use out of that. I mean, you can make huge pots of baked beans, pork and beans. Of course, you can do, you can do anything. Big things of jambalaya, gumbo, um, anything at all that you want to do a nice big pot in. The cauldron for a clam bake. Lobster, yeah, there you go. Now we're talking. I've got no complaints about that as well. So, Huey Bryan, I have a crane enamel Dutch oven that looks exactly like a BSNR Red Mountain. I heard about that recently on the BSNR collectors group. That apparently there was a foundry called Crane. I know very little about this, but apparently they did actually make cast iron pans that had a lot of similarity to BSNR. I know very little about this, and I'm definitely want to do more research into that area myself as well. So, but yes, definitely congratulations on having that Dutch oven there. Cynthia Wesley, I wouldn't use cast iron from China if I was y'all. I'd pack it up and send it to. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point. Yeah, if you don't like cast iron from China, there are a lot of folks here who will be more than happy to take it off your hands, folks. So consider that. Have a heart, be pitiful. I mean, or for that matter, if you don't like these people and you think, oh man, they're not worth it, I'm just gonna send them some Chinese cast iron. Ha ha ha, go ahead. I'm certain I don't think they will say no to that. So, Crane was in St. Louis and used a BSR as the pattern. That's all interesting too. So, yeah, definitely. As I said, I definitely need to do more work on that. Valerie Hancock Galen, dry ice. A few years ago, I did that. I have a short video somewhere on my channel and on my Facebook. One year, I took my smaller cauldron. Oh my goodness, I forgot to get that one out and make it and show it off to you. That's the smaller cauldron I have that's still vintage and it has flat top ears. And it's maybe about a foot across or so. But I took that one and a smaller Dutch oven and I filled the bigger one with dry ice and put the smaller one in it. And it did a really great smoky or steam effect. So, yes, putting dry ice into a cast iron pan, it what it did was it got a coating of well, condensation, frozen condensation like ice all around the outside, but the pot itself was not damaged. So yeah. Um and going on here. What years was Crane in St. Louis? Yeah, that's a good question too. Do you still have and use that large enameled stove cocotte you got a few years back? Answer is yes and yes. It is my go-to pasta sauce pot, among other things. And you're absolutely right. Let me go into the kitchen right now and dig that one out. Here it is. Speaking of cauldrons, here's another one. Here is the stove. Look at this compared to the other thing. Here is the stove. Ugh, La Cocotte, if I'm pronouncing it right. And yeah, up here, La Cocotte. This is the 13-quart stove enamel Dutch oven that I got to replace the Le Creuset Dutch oven that just simply wore out. And yes, I have definitely been getting use out of this as well. As I said, when I want to make a huge pot of Italian pasta sauce, I most definitely turn to this stove. There it is. I turn to the stove Dutch oven here because yeah, the perspective is all wrong at this point. But this thing is really huge. There is simply no question about that. I mean, this thing is, I would say, like maybe 13 or 14 inches across. So, and I can easily make a couple of gallons at least of pasta sauce in this thing, and I definitely like doing it. Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about stove in particular is that it has a black inside, and so it's instead of a white inside, and so it's not as likely to stain. So I definitely like that. Also, I'm pronouncing it Stobe. I got it off of their own website where they actually do pronounce it Stobe. It is not Staub or Staub, it is Stobe. And I'm basing this right on the manufacturer themselves. I have mispronounced a number of things, but apparently this is in fact pronounced Stobe. Okay, or whatever that's worth. Hmm. All right. Hmm. I know he says he's going to send. I reckon he's waiting for Christmas. It's about time for steak chili. Well, that sounds good too. I got my square skillet this weekend, and William told me it's a Wagner made in USA 10.5 skillet with a thumbprint. Yes, that is true. Wagner did make those square skillets with a thumbprint. I think they started doing the thumbprint thing sometime around the 1960s or maybe even 1970s. Actually, I do believe it may be more 1960s. So that is definitely something to enjoy. No question about that. Pawpaw Dan, once again, it keeps freezing every 3 to 5 seconds. I'm very sorry, Pawpaw Dan. Make jambalaya and big cauldron, and we will come. I guess I should ask, how has I'm sorry, Pawpaw Dan, but has anybody else had any problems on this in this live feed tonight? I would like to know for a couple of reasons. One of which, as I mentioned already, I have I did adjust it so that the commercials should be less noticeable, or at least I hope so. Also, they should be skippable ads. You should be able to skip past the ads. And one other thing as well, I finally got that RAM upgrade to my laptop. So now I'm running on 20 gigs of RAM on this laptop. And I'm hoping that helps give it a more steady feed. And everybody else here, Nessus River Catfishing, RT Scott, Myth Machining, all of these say everything good here and no problems. Well, I'm very glad to hear that. So yeah, I guess it was worth it then. As I said, did a RAM upgrade, a memory upgrade on this laptop, and it looks like we finally have a decent feed. So I can only give my condolences as well to Pawpaw Dan. One brief ad at 30 minutes. Excellent. Then I think it's finally working better. So yeah, I don't like the ads either, and I'm not just using it as an excuse by saying that unfortunately YouTube forced those ads on my channel, because in fact they did. So, and which is why I'm also hoping that a couple of the other regulars like Mudbrooker or Louis J, the next time you do a live, I'd like to see how the ads are managed there on your channels, because I would like to take, I'd like to offer advice or take lessons depending on how well those things turn out. So, okay, all good here for the live. One Pan Man, thank you very much. John, I got one commercial at 30 minutes in. 4Jim44, actually, who needs calcium? A Dutch oven holds more food than we can consume. Yeah, there is that too. Even these standard sized Dutch ovens, I would actually recommend. Okay, here we'll get into the usual question. I'm just starting out collecting in getting cast iron for the first time. What should I get? And the first thing anybody would say, and I would agree with this, would be the first thing would be a Lodge 10-inch skillet. End of story. It is the cast iron to use for a beginner, and that's what I had myself. The second piece of cast iron you should get, well, a couple of options there. One might be a bigger Lodge cast iron skillet. Another option would probably be a Dutch oven. And here is the question whether you should get enameled or bare. Because especially on YouTube, you know how all of the big professional cooking channels, they all use enameled Dutch ovens. Because they are great, yes. I mean, enameled Dutch ovens, you can use, again, you can, they don't have to be seasoned, and you can cook tomatoes and vinegar in an enamel Dutch oven. So they are definitely great. At the same time, I would recommend a bare Dutch oven as well if the opportunity comes up. And this is not mentioned very often. I don't see bare Dutch ovens on many of those big cooking channels, but I use these things all the time. I get a lot of use out of these things. I'm hoping you folks have seen my video on 500-degree chicken, for instance. And while it will work in an enameled pot, that 500-degree chicken will work, I think, better in a bare Dutch oven. I've made Boston baked beans in this bare Dutch oven, and it did not destroy the seasoning. As I mentioned before, I've made my Dutch oven chicken and rice in this. This is great. I even make mashed potatoes regularly in these things. So yes, definitely, there's a lot of use there for a Dutch oven here. The typical Lodge Dutch oven, in fact, which I have over here. Oh, yeah, here we go. Time to break out another cauldron. How about that, folks? Here it is. If there's one bare cast iron Dutch oven that you'll probably start out with, it would probably be this, the Lodge 5-quart bare cast iron Dutch oven, which in fact is very slightly bigger than this BSNR Dutch oven, very slightly anyway. And I probably need to move some of these things out of the way again. So I think I'll put the poiky back for now. We can always talk more about it, but it looks like right now we're about done with the poiky. Oh boy, this thing's heavy. Ugh. And it's time to pull out the Lodge Dutch oven. And quite often, you could even get this thing at a fairly decent price, too. So it is definitely something to get. At 5 quarts, this thing is big enough, again, for you to cook just about anything in it. It, of course, is bare cast iron. You can put it in the oven. You can put it on the oven. You can put a standard Lodge lid on it. They have special lids for these things. This really I find to be almost as useful as a cast iron skillet. And so um, I would say depending on your preferences, probably your number maybe 2, maybe 3 piece of cast iron to get would be a bare iron Dutch oven. And guess what? This thing here also makes a fantastic cauldron. It's even shaped in many ways like a cauldron. So even though it doesn't have the medieval marks on it, I mean, there is no way anybody would mistake this for something other than a cauldron. And especially if you were to bring this out on, like, say, Halloween or something, anyone would probably say nice cauldron on this thing. Funny thing about this one here, in fact, is that I got this for my parents, and which is and they didn't use it very often. Unfortunately, my parents passed away, and it happens, and so I ended up inheriting the family cast iron, which means that this pot came back to me, and I tried to get rid of this because I've got all of these other pieces of cast iron here. I didn't have another use for this Lodge Dutch oven. And yes, I know, but it's a family heirloom. I have many family heirlooms already from my parents, including several very special pieces of cast iron. So, but the thing is, even though I tried to get rid of this, no one wanted it. I I have put this thing out at flea markets twice now. Once a few years ago, and once when I did that flea market stand a couple of months ago. Both instances, people bought just about everything. They did not buy this, so it's still here with me. I even tried giving it to my one of my yeah, giving it to my brother, and ended up getting it back. So far, this particular pot has stuck with me. And so I'm guessing I don't know if you believe in karma or anything like that, but it's as though even though I've got all of these other Dutch ovens, it looks like this one may very well be here to stay. So my mom made so many meals in it. Great memories. Cast iron cookware, yeah, exactly. Is so sweet. No rules, versatile for any dish, definitely. And it looks like 4M Morris family got himself or herself a cast iron treasure. I inherited my great grandmother's 6-quart Wagner cast iron Dutch oven with trivet. Love it. Congratulations on that. Get a lot of use out of it, display it, show it off to family and friends. Fill it with Halloween candy. Yeah, okay, here's a thing for you this Halloween. Get out your Dutch ovens and fill them with candy so that you can use these for passing out the candy to any trick or treaters you might have in your neighborhood. I mean, who needs those stupid plastic cauldrons that they've got at Wally World and the like? When you have this, you've got a real cauldron. And as I said already, even a modern day Dutch oven, this is a cauldron, and there is no shame at all in calling this a cauldron. I mean, yeah, it's really great to own vintage cast iron, but modern day cast iron is also great. So I would definitely say, use it and don't shy away from it. Sorry, off subject, but we found a Griswold Good Health number 12 skillet, Captain Kirk. Well, congratulations. And I haven't been able to find any information on it in our book and haven't found any info on it. Really? Yeah, to be fair, I didn't even know that they made a Good Health in that size. I'm actually pretty shocked. Although about a month ago on TikTok, somebody stumbled across a number 12 Griswold Iron Mountain skillet, and I'd never seen one of those before either. If you're looking for Griswold information, I would suggest WAGS, the Wagner and Griswold Society. They've got their own website and their own discussion board. There is also a Facebook group, especially for Griswold users. And if you go on there, they will probably answer any questions that you have, including one about your number 12 good health. It's on Facebook. It's easy enough. Just look up under groups and look under Griswold, and you will find it easy enough. Just make sure it's a discussion group, not a selling group. I mean, they do some occasional selling, yes, but the primary thing about that is the discussion. So, George Lewis, I gave my BSR Dutch oven to my brother, and now I use 10-inch chicken fryers for the same purpose. Well, why not? I would have to say that was a nice, generous gift, and I can only congratulate you on that. I don't know if I'm ever going to get rid of this Red Mountain Dutch oven, but still, as I said, I mean that was very generous. So we have a number 12. We have a 12 Iron Mountain and a 14 Iron Mountain. Really? Wow. Boy, I'm learning something all the time here. I did not know there was a number 14 Iron Mountain. Yes, I know there are plenty of number 14 Griswolds. I've even seen a number 14 once and only once. I saw a number 14 gate mark, the generic gate mark skillet with a teardrop handle. Once I saw a photo of a number 14 of it. So they even made them in those days. I've never seen any other than that number 14. That's been my hunt. Yeah. My hunt is a decent Dutch oven for my dad. I found a few, but not worth the price they were asking. Well, I might suggest go the modern route then. You can get it on Wally World, or even if you go to a sporting goods store, like Dick's Sporting Goods or Bass Pro Shops or the like, you can get yourself, again, a large 5-quart Dutch oven at a fairly reasonable price. I know prices have been going up on everything these days, and I would guess the price of a large Dutch oven these days might be, if you find it on sale, $40 to $50. But that would not be a bad investment because it's a Dutch oven and it will certainly last you the rest of your life or the rest of your dad's life. So that might be one suggestion there, Kimberly, if I might say so. Boy, we've been going on, and there's still so much. I barely even touched on the subject of cauldrons as it goes. Yeah, I've been able to show off the this big 15-gallon cauldron, and I'm very happy about that. And we've touched on the lodge and the poiky. Okay, maybe I have done some stuff about cauldrons. Although I guess there's one other thing we should mention, and that, of course, would be camp ovens, of which I only have a couple because I really don't do a lot of cold cooking, including this one here, a large 8-inch camp oven, complete with the with the legs on it and everything like that. But this is definitely very useful, and I won this one as a door prize at the National Dutch Oven Gathering. So it's not something that I'm going to get rid of either, especially since this again is the perfect size for making what else? Cornbread. But there we go. It's got a nice Dutch oven sized shaped lid with the lip on the top for the coals. And once again, this is why I will say that if you want a modern day cauldron, going with a Dutch oven, there's really nothing wrong about that. If you don't want the Lodge logo on it, well, ugh, then you'll have to find other options. Because just about anyone these days will have the logo on it, but people really won't care about that. I mean, heck, this Poiki here, for instance. I think yeah. The here is the lid again for my South African Poiki, which very plainly has the Best Duty logo on it, as well as the size number 3. So it's certainly there, and yet, as I said, nobody complains about that because, of course, it is such a cool shaped pot. So getting one with a logo on it, there's really nothing wrong with that. After all, it'll cook just fine whether or not it has a logo on it. In fact, even the Ozark Trail Dutch ovens that they sell at Wally World at cheap prices, I mean, they have an Ozark Trail logo, but don't have an actual name on it. So Wagner is lighter than Lodge. That is true, yes. Wagner did make their pans thinner than Lodge. And so, but on the other hand, maybe that might be why they tended to warp more than Lodge, unfortunately. So, I love my Lodge 12-inch camp Dutch oven. I use it all the time when camping. Excuse me, Christine Brigatti, only one ad. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so I guess the ads are under control. Thank goodness, and I'm very appreciative of everybody who's been saying that. What surface would you use a Dutch oven with legs on it? I know you have some on a tripod over the fire. For a Dutch oven with legs, you can actually get a Dutch oven table from most of the major sellers. Camp Chef makes them. I'm not sure if Lodge makes them, but essentially it is a metal table, so that way you can put coals on the table and then just rest the Dutch oven right on top of it. So that's one option there. Or even if you use a fire pit or coal pit, I should say. No, I'm not going to get into the throw it into the fire thing. But I mean, that's the whole point. Those camp ovens really, with the legs, the original spiders and the original Dutch ovens with the legs on them. All of those, of course, had legs on them so that they could be cooked in the fireplace or the kitchen or the hearth or whatever you want to call it. And that's how you did it then. You just simply rested it right on the ground or the floor, I guess, so that the coals were right underneath it. And that's really what the legs are for. So that's one way to use it. And I guess there's another comment as well about those poikies. They have very long legs, much longer than the ones I've seen in American-made Dutch ovens. So right on the ground works well. I made a windscreen out of a computer tower and pieces. Yeah, there you go. BSR ain't too bad. I like my number 7 and number 8 Dutch oven. And I think I will mention one more time. Somebody asked me if there was a lid I was looking for. And I mentioned already the lid I'm looking for would probably be the Pioneer model or series or whatever it is, BSNR um, cast iron lid from their Century series. But on the other hand, there's a lid I have and a pot that I want to go with it. And that would almost certainly up. Oh, clang, clang. Let me get this out of the way right now. There it is. And that would be this lid, which I know I've shown off before as well. And that is the 13-inch BSNR camp oven lid. The one that says 13 inches, not 12, not 14, but 13. This, as I understand it, is from their Red Mountain days because they never made 13 inches when they went to their Century series. It's kind of pitted, which means that I'm presuming that probably means a lot of coals were used on this, especially since the underside is still almost pristine. But nonetheless, if one of these days I can somehow come across a 13-inch BSNR camp oven, or for that matter, a 13-inch BSNR spider, I would be in seventh heaven just to have that, just to have the match for this. So, I mean, if there's anything I would ask people to look for, it would probably be this: the 13-inch BSNR camp oven or spider. I granted it's extremely rare and I may never find one, but well, that's why they call it a treasure hunt. So there's an answer for you right there. All right, moving right along. Okay, Christine Borgatti, I have a Bear Lodge Dutch oven. After this, I'll make a video showing my windscreen. Nice. Yeah, and I certainly hope I find it too, Cynthia. But you never know. I mean, it's one of those things that if I find it, I'll be ecstatic. But well, there's always the thrill of the hunt. I have a 13 spider, but it has a broken handle. I would think any spider would probably fit that lid actually, because they were fairly standard in their sizes. After all, it's 12 inches, so any 12-inch spider would work, or a 13-inch spider. But even so, what surface would you use? A Dutch oven? Yeah, we mentioned that one already. Um, I have a 12-inch Lodge camp oven. Definitely needs something lighter. Yeah, probably looking for something lighter than Lodge. Oh, I see. You're talking about your dad, I think. I have a 13 spider. Oh, you said that already. Okay. All right. Moving right along here. Let me see now. I've mentioned already the Griswold Dutch oven. Haven't said too much about this. I mean, other than it's a Griswold, of course. But this, of course, was one of my first Brimfield scores, and I'm quite happy about it because I managed to score this number 8 size Griswold Dutch oven at Brimfield for $10. I found it at the bottom of a pile of junk that they had, that one of the dealers had there, and it was orange and really, really rusty. And it took quite a while, in fact, to restore this thing. I definitely used electrolysis on it, and I think it took several days. But the end result was really something life changing. In that, my first time cooking in a Griswold Dutch oven, I could feel the difference of what it was like to use this thing. So yeah, I'm quite happy to have gotten a lot of use out of this in my kitchen. So I can only say that bargains are out there. All you have to do is keep looking and going through the line. We've got the Lodge Country Kettles, we've got the Lodge Camp Oven, the Lodge 5-inch Dutch Oven, the enameled Dutch ovens, the BSNR Red Mountain Dutch Oven, and of course the big cauldron, as well as these two here on the floor too. So yeah, done a fair amount of talking about cauldrons. All of this, of course, has just been about cast iron and cauldrons, of course. Yeah, because I mean, I know there are folks again who get into things like ritual work and the like with their cauldrons, and well, I'm not much one for a discussion of that, but there are other channels that will that will get into that as well. I can only hope, though, that on my channel here, at least, this will give some help, some hints. I hope for folks who are looking for a cauldron. Because if you go to those new age stores looking for a cauldron, you're likely to find something that might be this size, this 1 pint size, and it might cost you like $30 or $40 or so. Whereas you can get a much better deal if you go looking for a Dutch oven rather than a witch's cauldron. But that's just how the market goes. All right. Did you get the lid with that $10 purchase too? $10. Oh, I see. Somebody found something for $10 here. It looks like the Spooky Cauldron series. Hmm. What year is that Griswold? That Griswold is actually from the 1920s, and I know that for a fact. Not just because of not just because, of course, of the large logo, but also because it has a patent number on the bottom here. Patent. Oh, yeah, boy, it's kind of dirty. In fact, gonna have to clean up the bottom of this thing. However, it has a patent number 1,333,917, and that patent date was something like around the year 1920. And the patent, in fact, I looked it up. The patent was for this handle, in fact, this handle that allows you to carry this Dutch oven, and it remains sturdy without wobbling back and forth and spilling the food. So this is definitely a 1920s Dutch oven, and I'm quite happy about it, and I've gotten a lot of use out of it, and that means this thing is really now has passed its 100th birthday. So it's gotten quite a bit of use in the last century, and I can only hope it gets at least another century out of it. Hmm. Grizz looks rather precarious on the edge of that table. Yeah, well, it's actually not doing too badly here. I mean, the table is actually pretty sturdy, and the Griswold is here it is. The Griswold, I mean, the table actually only a very, very tiny amount of it is on the edge of the table. So things are doing okay here. So yeah, I definitely do not want to drop this thing. I certainly agree. Well, we're getting on in time anyway, and so I'll be able to put all these back soon. But still, there we go. Going down the line here, I'm back to being regular bad luck. I'm not so sure about that. After all, I mean, you can't make a great score every day as much as you'd like to. So, hmm. When I go tomorrow hunting, I hope there's some stolen things up for grabs. We're supposed to get rain tonight. Haven't had any in quite a while. Yay! I made it. I made it to my first cast iron Wednesday. Well, hello. Rights Trump policy. Okay. I'm eating some cast iron chicken cooked in my one notch lodge. Really nice. That all sounds good. I mean, that's of course the best thing to do with your cast iron, and that's to cook in it. Who was it that YouTube celebrity? Oh yeah, that's right, Uncle Roger. Ugh. He's the one who commented about, how these Americans here, it's like we have more videos on YouTube about seasoning cast iron than actually cooking in cast iron. So we should make it a challenge really to show him wrong and make as many cooking videos as possible. I'm working on it, and I guess I'll just keep working on it. So, but it's all nice to have you here as well, RTP, and I can only hope everything comes back. We have to see the bulge pot. Oh yeah, the let me see. That's what you're talking about. I have a vintage cauldron with a large step at the bottom. The bottom is very heavy. It's slanted sides and a stepped in bottom. I think maybe it was used in a large commercial kitchen on the stovetop. You're talking about those bulge kettles of the kind that were made especially for wood burning stoves. I've said a number of times, that when in the late 18th, no, in the late 1800s, 19th century, that when wood burning stoves were so popular, I mean, after all, they changed the way we cook, that manufacturers would include a complimentary set of cookware to go with the stove. And that's usually when you got a skate mark skillet or griddle or a sometimes even a kettle, a bulge kettle, like you said, to go with it. I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of those then. And if you actually have one that's in decent condition, congratulations on that. Because as you probably know, while you can still find a lot of those at the antique malls, quite often the bottom of those are all rusted through or they have holes punched in them to make them into planters. So finding one of those in a good condition for cooking, that definitely would be a real score for you. And congratulations on that. So. Damn, notifications didn't work again. Hello, Silva579. What you had yours and yours, Val? Yes, I did pork chops. And hello as well. Just remember Wednesday. Well, thank you very much as well. And yeah, because I certainly enjoy doing these videos here on Wednesday, and I'm very flattered for everybody who's been kind enough to show up. You can always watch the replay as well, and I certainly encourage comments as well, even on the replays. But this is much bigger. It's like 20 gallons. Shadow Walker XM. So you've got yourself a big, huge cauldron then, a 20-gallon one. Well, congratulations on that. In that case, well, of course, you can always make yourself some jambalaya or some gumbo or booyah. That's one thing I have not made yet, and that is definitely something that I am looking forward to making when the opportunity comes up. Booyah! And anybody who is in the American Midwest knows what booyah is. Essentially, it's a big, huge mulligan stew where you throw in everything but the kitchen sink. And I'm certainly looking forward to doing one of those. And that's a good reason why they call it booyah. Yeah. All right, cool, Val. That sounds like an awesome pot shadow. Yes, it does indeed. So, big enough where you could practically hide a body in that. Not that I'm making any suggestions, mind you. Boy, but what can we say? I mean, it is indeed getting on into the season for cauldrons, not just because Halloween is coming, of course, but with winter coming, I mean, that means it's a great excuse as well to get out our big pots or cauldrons or Dutch ovens and do some slow cooking to help keep the house warm. Because, you get a 2-for-1. Not only does it keep the house warm, but you get yourself a slow cooked meal that is certainly worth it. Whether you're doing pork and beans, for instance, or ham and beans, or if you're making yourself pulled pork or even chicken, you name it. There are so many dishes we can do in our Dutch ovens here, and we're definitely getting into the season for it because, like it or not, the holidays are starting to poke up over the horizon, and it's time to start our preparations for them once again. Yeah, our neighborhood used to make a booyah every summer. Well, then instead of used to, make a booyah and start the tradition up again. And we can always go from there. Love Dutch oven cooking in the fall and winter. Too bad they quit, but I bet it was fun. Our fire hall makes chowder, chicken, and beef cooked over woods in a 30-gallon iron kettle. Well, there we go. That is definitely something to help take part in. A cauldron would be awesome. Make a big old slow stew, or corned beef and potatoes, all of which sound great. Yeah, and even and again, when St. Patrick's Day comes around next March, you've got your Dutch oven or your cauldron, and you can use that and make your corned beef so much better than anything you can get at the store. Hmm. Hmm. Wow, we're already getting into that time, aren't we? So, booyah sounds awesome. Might try that in gumbo when it gets a little bit colder out. Yeah, my plan for this Halloween is I think I'm going to do gumbo. The last couple of years on Halloween, I've made jambalaya. This year, I've already made jambalaya back on X Day, if you remember, back in June, and then I made a pastalaya as well when I went to that music festival only about a month or so ago. Both of which were great, but I realized instead this year for Halloween, I'm going to do gumbo and see if I can share it with the neighbors. I'm happy for holidays, and the broker I am seems to be the more happier we will all be. You can definitely join the club with that as well, Cynthia. Would the chowder take on a gray cast? I made St. Jacques cast iron once and it turned out kind of gray. I've made clam chowder in a bare cast iron Dutch oven, and actually I didn't seem to have any problem with it. I guess what you should do is make sure it's seasoned first. And in fact, if you worry about whether or not it may take on a gray color, before you start cooking with it, give the inside of the pot a coating of, say, Crisco, for instance. That might help. All right, someone needs to take it back on Terry. Sounds like it. Yeah, exactly. And Booyah sounds like Brunswick stew. There are similarities. I think Booyah has more veggies in it than Brunswick stew. Brunswick stew seems to be meat, 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 and meat, along with some veggies and some beans thrown into it. At least that's my opinion of Brunswick stew. Let's see the smaller cauldron sitting on the bottom of your rack. Oh, yes. Okay, we'll do that. And then I think we're going to be calling it a night because, among other things, I'm going to have to uh, move these things around here. Well, there's an excuse. And maybe you might want to see this live. You get to see me lifting this huge Dutch oven here. Not Dutch oven, this huge cauldron because I've got to put it on the floor and put it back. So, and what's more, I've got bare feet too. Well, socks. However, okay, which means what we have to do is be careful, nice and slow. See, that's the way to do it. And a one, a two. Up, right. Oh, yeah. All right, there we go. In we go. Ah, and we got it. Haha. Oof. That was an adventure. Now we just slide this thing carefully. So I don't want to scratch the floor here. There we go. Good. They're all in. Okay. There you go. Now I just stick it under here. Pull the rug out. Come on. There. Maybe just a little more. All right, good enough. There. Whew. Got that out of the way. Now I can move this stool. And now finally, we can head under here. Yeah, here we go. It's like I'm playing Jenga here or something. Because now I have to move this Boba Fett skillet. And finally, here it is. Here is the smaller cauldron. Got it. Here we are. This is the smaller version of that same big round cauldron. This is the one that I think I mentioned before I found on my birthday at an antique mall in New Bedford, Massachusetts. So yeah, this is a nice sized cauldron. Like before, it definitely has flat top ears and a nice sprue mark on the side, which is why I think it may very well be vintage, but I don't really have any way to properly date this. All I know is it's a nice heavy cast iron cauldron, and this one. In fact, I have specifically been using for my Halloween candy each year, and I'm certainly going to do it this year as well. Um, I managed to pay $20 for this, and especially since I found it on my birthday, I guess you could say it's something of a keepsake. And I certainly have no intention of getting rid of this. It's also much easier to lift up, heavy enough, but it's much easier than that huge cauldron too. So it's like a baby brother to it. Ugh. Okay. And having said that, I think we are getting on here. Made red beans and rice in the enamel cast iron yesterday. Nice on a rainy day. Finally rain in Houston, and congratulations on that. Pull the rug out, put the pot on top, and scoot back under the rack. Work smart, not hard. Yes, exactly. Because I can see that I am going to have to reposition that rug as well. But the important thing is that it's there. So, and at least it's safe, and it's not going to. Yeah. Am I the only one that worries about lead with cauldrons? You know, while nothing is impossible, I don't think there's much of a possibility that these cauldrons were used for melting lead, except possibly for industrial purposes. And that I don't think would have been done on a regular basis because, pouring lead very precisely requires a pour spout. And a typical cauldron like this, while it's certainly big enough that you could melt a lot of lead and produce a lot of, say, bullets for an army, for instance, I would think, again, you would need a pour spout on this. It could be done, but it wouldn't, it really doesn't seem very likely that it would be very convenient for melting lead. It's also awkward for those people who melt lead as part of their hobby, like casting old bullets and all that. So I don't think this is really the right shape to be a common lead melter. Now, nothing's impossible, of course, and if you certainly want to do a lead test on any piece of cast iron that you find to be suspicious, then you probably should certainly do so. I just don't think that using an old cauldron for melting lead would have been very common. So that's my opinion, of course, and I really don't have any way to justify that. So excellent point. Well, okay. Other commercial. Okay, ad time. All right. Well, that means we're definitely getting in time then, I guess. No commercials at all tonight. Well, congratulations, Rocket Caver, as well. But I would have to say that we're probably getting into that time in that case. Time to call this a night because we've actually managed to make it an hour and a half in. And my condolences to Papa Dan, but apparently it looks like we finally have the feed working again. I mean, in general, it looks like the feed's been reliable. We've gotten these ads down to a minimum, so I'd say we're doing good here. And just as important, I guess, we actually have we have gotten a look at a lot of these cauldrons here. So things are doing pretty good. Whoops, all things considered. Sorry about that. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. We managed to take a look at a fair number of these cauldrons. And, well, there's really not much else I could say about the subject of cauldrons. Let me lower this up a little bit. About the subject of cauldrons, other than Halloween's coming, and even besides Halloween, I would definitely recommend at least one cast iron Dutch oven in your kitchen simply because it's so useful. I mean, they talk about these things that that you should have in every kitchen, and they always mention a cast iron skillet, and that's certainly true. The other piece of cast iron you definitely need in your kitchen is a cast iron Dutch oven. Whether it's enameled or bare or both is up to you. But again, if you don't have any, you need at least one. And having said that, I think we're probably about done with our cauldron show tonight, I would say anyway. So I could as always, though, I mean, thank you everybody for showing up. After all, we all have we all have to work tomorrow. Well, most of us have to work tomorrow, yes. But nonetheless, we are getting on in time, and well, what can we say? There's a lot of cooking to do. We've got our families to think of, which means it's time to start preparing for the next round of cast iron cooking. And what we really want to do more than else is have fun. So thank you. Oh, tell us about the shirt. Oh, yeah, the shirt. Yeah, I got this shirt a few years ago, really just as a gag more than anything else. Largely having to do with drama on the cast iron cooking group because I am not a fan of drama, and you know that as well. In fact, I even posted this on Facebook earlier today when there was apparently some people were panicking over that FEMA emergency test that they did earlier this afternoon, which, as you saw, lasted all of what, 5 seconds? But nonetheless, exactly as it says, folks, keep calm and cook in cast iron. And that, I think, is a good way to end it. So I can only thank everybody, though, for showing up. And yes, thank you. Well, thank you to Cynthia Wesley. And thank you to Huey Bryan and Huggy Bear 516 and Val's Black Cat's Rules. And hello, Rums. Thanks for the show. And thank you for being here. I wouldn't be here without you folks. And I mean that literally. I mean, I've said before that I don't depend on the income I'm making from Google. which is nice. But on the other hand, what I do enjoy is your company. And I say this every week because I mean it. Having you folks here to chat with really does make these live videos so special, and it's something that I certainly intend to keep doing for quite a while because it's fun. Because your comments and your conversations are really what makes this all interesting and fun, and it encourages me to keep on going. Because I've been doing this for 10 years now, and a lot of these YouTube cooking channels have come and gone, and I've just been plugging along. And thanks to you folks, I certainly intend to keep on plugging along. So thank you, everybody, for being here. And above all else, have fun cooking, everyone. That's really the most important thing, dude. So for everyone, Deepel Pal and Pat Z and Kimberly Miller and everybody else. Yeah, have a good evening, everybody. And as I said, above all else, well, keep safe. That's also important. But especially have fun cooking, especially when it comes to cast iron. So thank you, everybody, for watching, and we will do this all again. And so, as I like to say, from my favorite movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey. See you next Wednesday.